And I'm going to share the screen. And I think you're good to go. You unmute it. Yes, okay.
All right, good evening. Thanks for coming out tonight, and welcome to the public open house for the Kingsport MTPO 2045 Long Range Transportation Plan. We're going to give you an overview of the planning process that we've been working on for the past little over a year here, and give you a quick overview of the process and talk about how we've come up with some of the recommended projects for the draft plan. To start out with, if you're not familiar with the MTPO area, you can see the study area over on the right-hand side of the slide here, and you can see the communities and the counties that are part of the Tennessee and Virginia planning area. One of the first things that we did at the start of this process was we developed a set of goals and objectives to guide the planning process. You can see those three goals that we came up with: livability, sustainability, prosperity, and you see different objectives that fall underneath there. So focus in on safety, balancing roadway capacity, mobility, land use, seeking cost-effective strategies, looking at new technology, supporting tourism, economic development. So these are all principles that we follow throughout the process and incorporate into our evaluation. Public outreach has been a very important element, critical to the study process. We did a survey at the beginning where we asked participants to provide their input on key elements of the vision. You can see on the some of the green words there: safe and connected, environment, economic vitality. And you can see in the blue and red bars that we had very high ratings of that these elements were very important or important to the process. And so this is something that we factored into the development of the goals and objectives. If you are interested in seeing any of these outreach results, you can visit the Kingsport2045LRTP.com. It's a virtual room where we have some material posted there. We also did some issues mapping. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen, we had respondents provide comments on safety, traffic congestion, walking, bicycling, transit. We had conducted 6 stakeholder interviews. Those were grouped around these different categories of safety, healthy communities, and you can equity. And you can see a number of issues. If you look under safety, we have improved I-81, I-26 interchange. Also heard that comment under the freight section as well. And so you start to see a number of these issues crossing over. When we talk about regional mobility, people talked about wanting later bus service, extending bus service, looking at connecting to the Tri-Cities area, and really enhancing overall access. We then conducted a second public survey using MetroQuest. You can see on the left-hand side an example of the screen. We asked people to help identify what their priority projects were. And again, you see a theme here of reconstructing I-81, I-26 interchange was the most frequently ranked project. Second was improving State Route 36, and also improving I-26 showed up as well. So those results are all available on that virtual room. Again, the website address is available at the bottom of the screen if you're interested in seeing that. One of the next steps in the process is to identify where population and employment growth will occur. And so you can see we looked at year 2018 population as a base. We projected it out to 2030 and out to 2045. We broke it down into sub areas, 23 sub areas, and we allocated that growth working with local agencies and staff to identify those growth areas. And ultimately, that growth is then converted into various trips within the region using a model that we work with, and that helps us identify where transportation needs will be in the future. So some of the areas that we look at specifically are related to roadway and freight. We look at network connectivity, and so you see these orange lines where we start to talk about again, like number one there in the I-81, I-26 interchange area. This is a very important regional connection to the in the area. It is an area that provides a lot of system-to-system movement for vehicles, for trucks. And so this is something that, again, has been talked about. You'll hear me mention throughout the presentation. We also look at item number 2 there, extending 357 to the north. This is something that TDOT's looked at a couple options. And when you look at the area, you start to see that the need for an additional north-south connection really in this growth area to the southeast that will be happening in the future. A couple other things there that we look at in terms of travel movement between Virginia and areas to the east and heading out of the metropolitan planning area. And so we're also looking at truck access as we go through the study as well. Enhancing safety is a goal, as I mentioned earlier. And so when we start to look at various safety issues, we identify this through looking at crash data. We also talk to local law enforcement as part of stakeholder outreach. You can see here these yellow circles represent high crash locations. You can also see like number 7 and number 8 are areas where truck climbing lane would be helpful on the interstate. And generally speaking, and one of the things we learned from stakeholder interviews was overall high travel speeds and reckless driving being a concern. One thing the MTPO is currently doing is starting a more detailed safety analysis for the metropolitan planning area. And so that will help identify specific improvements, and that will be occurring over the next 6 months to a year. Another area we look at is reducing traffic congestion. We run various models to look at, again, we take that growth and we project that out to the year 2045 to see where there will be issues. And you can start to see a number of areas, again, the interchange area popping up, some segments along I-26, number 12 and 13, Stone Drive, we start to see some congestion. We also see it in Bloomingdale Road, Bloomingdale Pike area with additional growth occurring there as well. And finally, we also look at kind of traffic operations, traffic flow. And so these are things where we might be looking at signal timing, traffic signal improvements, using technology to help traffic flow more efficiently. And so there's some corridors there that you probably recognize with Stone Drive, again, US 23 up in Virginia as an area that we're concerned with, and looking at State Route 36 as well. Number 22 there, one of the things that the area is going to be doing is installing ITS or intelligent transportation solutions along I-81 from I-26 to the Virginia, just past the Virginia state line. This plan is also multimodal, so in looks at public transportation as well as the roadways. And some of the things that we identified from a transit perspective is that gold area there highlighted as number 1 is the CATS fixed route service area right now. So that's where the buses currently run. One of the things that CATS has been looking at, especially since COVID hit and the reduction in transit ridership, is transitioning potentially to a demand response system. And what this would do is buses would no longer operate along a fixed route, but would really respond to when a rider calls in or would ask for a particular ride. Providing later service is something we've heard a lot about. Expanding into those blue areas or that are highlighted number 2 there. So these are areas that are growing or established communities and currently don't have fixed route transit service. They do have other transit options within the area, but these are areas where we could potentially look at other transit service availability in the future. And then number 3 there, those black arrows represent additional connections really outside of the Kingsport MPA area. And so connecting to Johnson City, Bristol, and looking at park and ride facilities as well. We also look at non-motorized needs and opportunities. This recently, or actually just earlier today, the MTPO adopted the Kingsport Regional Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. You can access that through the link at the bottom there of the screen. But what we do in the LRTP is make sure that we're coordinating with those improvements that are identified in that plan. And so there's really kind of 3 key themes that we looked at: enhancing regional connections, local connections, and then also supporting tourism and economic activity. And so, you know, the existing Kingsport Greenbelt is a great asset in the region, and we're really in all 3 of these areas looking at opportunities to enhance that facility. So one of the ways we go about doing the evaluation is we come up with the criteria that you see on the screen here, and we put different scores to it, and you can see there's 20 different measures that we use to evaluate the potential projects in the area. And we assign scores, a total score, to identify really what the top performing projects are. And really the top performing projects are just the highest scoring projects. And you can see here that number 1, East Stone Drive, ranked the highest. So this is an area that has some congestion issues, some access issues. Fort Henry Drive is ranked number 2. And then the US 23 corridor in Virginia was ranked 3rd. These are all projects that scored over 60 points, the highest one scoring 72. And so these are the projects that we really start to try to program first when we come to a recommended roadway and freight plan. So one of the things that we have to do as part of this process is it's called a fiscally constrained plan. And what that really means is that we're looking at how much money historically the Kingsport area has had to spend on transportation. And then we look at the cost of these different projects, and we try to see how many of the projects we can realistically do through the horizon year 2045. And so what you see on the screen there on the right is the projects that we're looking at. If you want to take a closer look at this, you can visit the virtual room again. We have these boards there. And then what we'll be doing is refining those projects you see on the right a little bit. But there are 2 main points here. One, those purple projects are Improve Act projects that have been identified by TDOT. And those are projects that we look to program first. And then the second thing that we look at again is those top scoring projects I just showed on the last slide, and really see if we can fit those into our with the available funding. If you come back to the virtual room in April, we'll have a draft plan available that you can review and look in more detail at these particular projects. We also have what's called the illustrative projects, and these are projects that are important to the area, but due to higher project costs or other challenges, they aren't part of the fiscally constrained plan. Another way to think of it is if additional funding were to become available, these would be the next projects kind of ready to go that the MTPO would prioritize. And you can see again, I-81, I-26 interchange. We talked about that quite a bit. That's a need that we've heard from the public through the technical analysis. Improving or extending Route 357 is also would be a great value to the area as it develops to the east and southeast. US 23 corridor. There is a study being done currently that VDOT is conducting called Project Pipeline. That will identify some specific projects that will be incorporated into the LRTP at some time. And then a couple other projects there that you see on I-26 and Moccasin Gap are things that we're looking as potential projects in the future. So, you know, what happens next? We're currently going to be revising the plan based on some feedback we've received on the draft from TDOT and VDOT. But again, we welcome public comments and the best way to do those or to provide those would be to send an email to myself. Or if you want to go on to the virtual room, there's a way to send comments to the project team. And again, come back in April, review the draft plan. And again, just to kind of wrap up, if you are interested in taking a closer look at the boards, you can go to the virtual room, kingsport2045lrtp.com. You can see some overall material. You can review the project goals, take a closer look at the public survey results, and then send us an email. We'll contact you when that report is ready. So with that, I'll take any questions. Yes. Yeah, so there's different projects there will be different projects throughout. So there could be multiple projects along a corridor. So, you know, sometimes we break projects down, and even going into when we do the fiscal constraint analysis, a lot of times we're going to have to break big projects down into smaller projects to actually implement those. So any other questions? Okay.
Let's see if there's any online questions. No, there is not.
Okay. Then is it? All right. Thank you for watching and